Giving an honor to a young man by the name of Bradley L. Candy, who graduated from Morehouse College in Atlanta in 1992. This is the youth we're talking about today that are graduating and coming out of the street to do things for us. It is now my privilege and honor to introduce to you Mrs. Gladys Lee, who is going to introduce our guest speaker. Mrs. Lee.
I'd like to thank our Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Moore, and to the dais guests, and to the honorees. I'd like to say congratulations. I want to first say this evening that I feel very blessed to have this opportunity to introduce our speaker, Dr. Timothy Owens Moore, a young man whom I have watched grow from a fine boy to a distinguished scholar, and also a husband, a father, and a professor. My relationship to Timmy dates back to his youth when I was his Sunday school teacher at Bethlehem Baptist Church. I was privileged to attend Timmy and Terry's wedding, and this young couple thought enough of his roots to bring their baby son back to Bethlehem to be dedicated to God. I also was invited to share in that joyous occasion. Now about Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore carries himself in a simple elegance with plainness that shows character. He's a person who is very approachable, yet no nonsense. Someone who lives his Christian values. He is someone that the parent would feel very proud to say, that's my son, or the grandparent, that's my grandson, or that's my neighbor, or that's my friend. And I would like to say to you here, the guests out here in the audience this evening, that if you need a role model, and we need black male role models, this day and time we need them more so. I say if you want to find a role model, one that, let's say, does not have to know how to throw a ball, doesn't know how to dunk a ball, and really doesn't need a bat to hit a home run, take a look at Dr. Timmy Moore. I want to tell you this evening how proud it is that I am of this young man. I also want to say that I don't want to stand up here and read to you his biographical sketch, because that's in your program, and you may read that for yourself. But I can tell you that he's a graduate from Wissahickon Senior High School in Ambler, Pennsylvania. I can tell you that he received his BS degree from Lincoln University in Oxford, Pennsylvania. I can tell you that he received his PhD from Howard University, Washington, D.C., and that he is currently on the faculty of the esteemed Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. This, I can tell you, is a fine young man, and I am just as eager as each of you to hear him this evening. And there is a noted black poet, Sterling Brown, that once stresses in one of his poems that strong men keep coming. I present to you this evening a strong young man, Dr. Timothy Owens Moore.
Thank you very much for that applause. To President Dorothy Kelly and presiding officers, to the Honorees Selection Committee, to Mrs. Gladys Lee for that wonderful, heartwarming introduction, and to the entire Ambler branch of the NAACP. I would like to thank all of you for this gracious honor. I'm extremely overwhelmed and elated that you have extended an opportunity for me to give this keynote address for your annual banquet. I thank you very much for making me feel as though I'm worthy of being honored. I feel special this evening because there are not many situations that are much better than coming back home to your community and seeing open arms of appreciation. In return, my family and I also extend open arms of love to you. Also, on that note, I would like to thank family, friends, and the entire audience for coming out to support the NAACP. And in respect for a person who was partly responsible for bringing me on this planet, I would like to say, I hope you're enjoying your birthday, MC Joseph Moore. I must honestly say that I have given numerous scientific presentations and academic lectures, but this is my first time to actually address such a distinguished body, a distinguished audience. I've extracted the normal academic jargon and the polysyllabic terminology in hopes to provide a message for the young as well as the older generation of activists. If in the course of the address someone is offended, then I'm sorry, but I'm only making statements in the interest of truth. So in terms of my opening remarks, the other thing was that it was kind of cold today, and I was reminded from myself, I thought about this. Today, being a cold day, on February 16, 1991 was also a cold day. That's when my wife and I got married. It was the coldest day of the year. Today's the 20th of November, and here we are coming together again. It's the coldest day of the year again. I don't know what that means, but let me begin our address. I am pleased that you have selected such a challenging topic for this evening's keynote address. Passing the torch, preparing for a better tomorrow. Before I go any further, let me first define what is meant by torch. One usually refers to a torch as a piece of wood with some substance at the end soaked in inflammable fluid and used as a portable light. Using the torch within the context of a social discussion, however, I will refer to the torch as an entity that can provide illumination, inspiration, and enlightenment. I hope to remind you this evening that illuminating, inspiring, and enlightening ideas are very important for preparing us for a better tomorrow. Now, it is a challenging topic because it seems like there is no possible way that black people worldwide will ever get out of the present darkness of our social, political, economic, moral, and spiritual condition to even think about a better tomorrow. There is a flicker of hope, however, and it is found in our creative minds. The torchlight of hope that illuminates in all of our minds is called imagination. By breaking the word down, we get imagination. That is an image of a nation. Okay, I know I'm not in the class now, but please follow along with me anyway. This image of a nation is related to the saying, a people with no vision will perish. Well, our vision is certainly cloudy, foggy, and bleak, but with the assistance of a torch, we can envision new ideas for a better tomorrow. To get this done, there are two specific ways in which the torch could be utilized. First, it could be passed from one generation of leaders to the next. I question the passing of the torch, however, because our current social dilemma is more important than a relay event and track race where you're reluctantly praying that your teammate can finish the race. I think a more effective way to utilize the torch is to have it taken by the next generation of leaders. By taking the torch, you are demonstrating your strength and boldness to provide bright leadership in these times of darkness. The taking of the torch is the position I support, but it will require that the next generation is equipped with the intellectual artillery and moral responsibility to carry on the torch once they have taken it. I also believe that individual families and community organizations should provide the vision and imagination for the next generation, just as Mr. Johnson and Mr. Dean have just told you. Concisely, that is the message I hope to leave you with tonight. When I was initially informed about the topic, the very first thought that came to my mind was a statement written by the late Frantz Fanon, a black psychiatrist. He was an intensely active individual in the political and social scene. In many ways, I have been influenced by his writings. He said in his first book, Black Skin, White Mask, "And so, it is not I who make a meaning for myself. It is the meaning that was already there, pre-existing, waiting for me. It is not out of my misery and hunger that I will shape a torch with which to burn down the world. but it is the torch that was already there, waiting for that turn of history. What Fanon is saying here is that before you were even born, there were problems already existing in society. Do not grow up being angry, hateful, and create a torch to burn down a city like what happened in LA. There was a torch that was already there, waiting for you to come along with a new vision of how the world can be, not just to burn it down. That torch will never be extinguished, however, except under extreme circumstances. Therefore, we have got to get to work and carry on that torch that Fanon was talking about. And to really make use of this torch that is usually placed in front of your eyes to help you travel through the dark, I suggest that the torch be placed under the seat of the pants for those who need a little prodding and a little help to get things done. I want you to remember, and I will state later on, that work can only get done by actively participating in a task. The first time that I clearly realized that there was work to do was when I became politically conscious in graduate school. I spent hours, nights, mornings, any free moment, reading, and reading. And I say to you on that note that whatever you spend most of your time doing, that's what you value. For me, it has been education. Ever since that first year in college, 1982, when I was prepared to quit school and give up education because I thought I could not do the work. I was accepted into Lincoln's Aerospace Engineering Recruitment Program before I officially graduated from high school. The program was too accelerated, so I was ready to give up the college experience. As a result, my first hunger for education was due to the fact that I had to catch up for the deficient educational experience I got at Wissahickon High School, a predominantly white high school. Wissahicon's fairly decent, but there is minimal academic achievement for black males. Now, I was just one little black kid from high school. Can you imagine how many more throughout the nation have fallen through the cracks? I'm not espousing that everyone needs a BS, that's a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD to have education. Do not get me wrong. My most valuable experiences pertaining to education have been outside of the walls of academia. It is independent study and self-discipline that I'm referring to. You have to develop a desire to ask questions so you can be able to find solutions to your own problems. What I'm trying to say is that we must develop the ability to think independently and to discipline ourselves in many facets of our lives. This process will set the stage for a vision of an image of a nation. Well, my other hunger for education and interest in psychology was an internal drive for what I did not know in reference to my heritage and history. I began a full-fledged independent search for the truth about the origins of people who look just like me. When someone said that truth crushed to the earth will rise again, I personally went to the mountaintop looking for answers. What I found out is that information is power. Ignorance is death. I found out that having a correct interpretation of history and how you fit into the world's scheme can do wonders for your soul. Do you know you walk differently when you know your history? Do you know you act differently when you know your history? Do you know you deal with the world differently when you know your history? The slave master knows. The oppressor knows. The minority of people in world power know. Therefore, to keep people slaves, oppressed, and unconscious, you indoctrinate them, you miseducate them, and you teach them incorrectly. Since the masses of the world's population are poorly educated and also illiterate, there is no mystery as to why there is so much turmoil on this planet. If you cannot read, then you are clearly disadvantaged in this information age. Even if you can read, however, you're not out of troubled water because of the way human behavior can be manipulated. You see, as a psychologist, I'm aware of how behavior can be modified and controlled. In the history of psychology, B.F. Skinner is one individual who has had a significant impact on how behavior can be influenced. Skinner was very interested in controlling behavior, and his ideas have been utilized by many white-dominated and control-oriented societies. In 1971, he wrote a book titled Beyond Freedom and Dignity. Essentially, he has written a book to state that you can give people freedom and dignity, that is so-called civil rights, and you can still control them. This is very critical in terms of civil rights in America. In fact, one of the civil rights sheroes by the name of Fannie Lou Hamer tried to remind us that if the white man gives you anything, just remember, when he gets ready, he can take it back. Her words may not be readily understood by people who have illusioned themselves into thinking they have made it in this system. People who may not be black or white or upper class or lower class, but who are in the middle of the spectrum and straddle the fence and go both ways. Some of the middle people can be obstacles to progress in a society that is controlled by a few ruling elite. Let me explain. In modern America, Asians have been used by the white power structure as an obstacle to the progress of blacks and low and middle class whites. This has been done by redirecting funds and other resources to another minority group rather than those who feel they should receive the most benefits. In effect, animosity is created between Asians and other minority groups as a result of policies created, developed, and maintained by the white elite. The white elite is able to thrive in this type of social environment because they are able to control middle and lower class people like puppets. Another group of people that have been controlled by the white ruling class is the middle class. Get this week's issue of Newsweek magazine and read about the sad state of the black, middle, and upper class. Despite their successes, they express a hidden rage. In terms of achieving real progress, middle class society is a fallacy. This class of people straddle the fence between high aspirations and the reality of poverty. Lower class people would like to move on up to the top like the Jeffersons on the TV show, but there are social conditions limiting that rise in real life. To eradicate this classism and to reach equal justice for all, a revolution will have to occur. If revolution has never occurred to you as a way to truly free you from oppression, then I say that you have not seriously thought about freedom from these oppressive conditions. Take note that since there are more white people that make up the majority of people on welfare, public housing, Medicaid, and Medicare, the oppression we are referring to does not discriminate. Therefore, revolution in an unjust society should be carried out by all those who are negatively affected. It is not the violent revolution that we are talking about here. It is a revolution in values. To give my thoughts more credence, I should mention that one of the stalwarts from the Civil Rights era, Martin Luther King, believed in revolution. You know Malcolm X did. I'm talking about Dr. King. Do not let the media fool you by freezing your memory of him by the reflection pool in 1963. In 1967, King progressed and revolutionized his own thinking. He said in a speech entitled America's Chief Moral Dilemma, "We are now dealing with issues that will demand a radical redistribution of economic and political power. Many of the allies that went with us in the first phase are not going with us in this phase. This new phase, the human rights revolution." King goes on to say, "There are times in life that you must take a stand that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but you take it because it is right. And that is where I stand," unquote. Now that is the kind of torch that could be used to restructure society and provide light for the image of a new nation. You know who most feared that kind of message? The U.S. government. King's revolutionary ideas caused the U.S. government to label this former Nobel Peace Prize winner as the most dangerous man in America. He indeed had a plan, and it was revolution. I reiterate that I am not expressing military struggle. I am only talking about changing the system so that justice can prevail. I do not believe for 1 minute that the United States government would tolerate a violent uprising from its unorganized and disgruntled citizens. However, there are some youth that have been involved in gangs that are willing to plan if necessary. That is one faction of the youth that may want to take the torch. However, there is an apologist vanguard in existence that can have a potentially negative influence on black progress. These apologists are products of the black middle class, and the white media has labeled them as the new black vanguard or leadership. Because of some of their views they express, we may not want to pass on the torch to this group of people. I'm referring to such black people as Thomas Sowell, Shelby Steele, and Clarence Thomas.
All right, you got it all.
Some of their beliefs or intellectual ideas criticize black organizations like the NAACP, but their perspectives are applauded by the white power structure. For example, Sowell believes it is morally perverse to institute preferential treatment. He says, quote, "Live people are being sacrificed because of what dead people did," unquote. That is harsh criticism to the NAACP. Shelby Steele wrote a book in 1991 titled Not the Color of My Skin, but the Content of My Character. It's a good title, it's a bad book. Of course we want people to respect us for our character, but we don't want to act as though color is insignificant in this race-conscious society. The white power structure praised his book and another book written by William Julius Wilson in 1978, The Declining Significance of Race. You know as well as I do, race is not declining. An interesting dynamic in the lives of these two authors, along with Clarence Thomas, is that they are married to white women. That helps to explain why their ideas are less critical of racism in white society. The point I'm trying to make is that the white media selects and chooses these intellectuals and labels them as leaders. They get plenty of media time since they are professing a message that white people can psychologically tolerate. Their messages cut loose the culpability of years and years of injustice. You know what I mean? White people, white America acts as though slavery never existed. As a matter of fact, some white journalists were dumbfounded when some German youth asked some frank questions during a visit in Germany. Listen to these words from a 1993 newspaper article called "The Shadow of Slavery." This was written in the Atlanta Constitution. A group of students at the University of Bonn were angry with the visiting U.S. journalists. The young liberals said they were tired of seeing the U.S. media give so much publicity to Germany's neo-Nazi youths. Their questions were blunt. Why are Americans so quick to assume all German youths want to forget the Nazi atrocities? Why do U.S. journalists write so much about the Holocaust Museum in Washington? Yes, it pays so little attention to efforts to create museums about African Americans and Native Americans. Why doesn't Washington have a museum about slavery? One young woman asked. We journalists had no answer. Why indeed does the U.S. Capitol have an enormous museum recording the sins of another country, but none outlining the horrors of American slavery? American slavery, we are referring to a process of enslavement that has damaged generations of black people worldwide. In the U.S., blacks have never gotten reparations for years of free labor, not even 40 acres and a mule. Despite the historical amnesia suffered by black Americans, the torch that Fanon was talking about that was pre-existing